and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome everyone to the third annual Summit for Smart Growth and Sustainable Communities. I'm really thrilled to see such a nice gathering here this morning, and I promise you a very stimulating, provocative, and hopefully inspiring conference. Before we get started this morning, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to mention that the Lehigh Valley lost a true friend and leader this past week with the passing of Bert Beatty. Bert was one of the founders of Renew Lehigh Valley and a longtime board member. He was a powerful, passionate voice for many regional initiatives and a champion of countless causes that have really contributed to the quality of life here in the Lehigh Valley. Bert had a great love for this community, and he will be missed. We send our prayers and best wishes to his wife Lois and to his entire family. Now, before we begin the proceedings today, I'd like to thank some important folks who helped to make this summit possible. First, let me recognize our sustaining sponsor, Just Born. I know my good friend David Schaffer is sitting out here someplace. He's very modest, doesn't like to be recognized, but I do want to ask him to stand and let us thank him. David? I know. And more importantly, thanks as always for the candy, David. I want to also thank our partner sponsor, Samuel Adams, and also the Greater Lehigh Valley Realtors Association. The Lehigh Valley Realtors underwrote our luncheon keynote speaker today, so thank you to them. We're also very fortunate to have the support of 25 other sponsored companies this morning. They're listed over there and in your packets as well. That's an amazing group of companies who are here to support us, and we're so appreciative. Thank you so much to them. And finally, just briefly, I want to acknowledge the hard work of our small but powerful board of directors, whose names are also listed in your packets. And I especially want to thank our two co-chairs for today's event, Michael Ravenstadt and Julie Thomas. Michael couldn't be here this morning, but Julie certainly is. And I do want to ask her to stand and be recognized so we can give her a proper minute. Really unbelievable efforts. This could not have happened without you, Julie. So now on with the show. It's my pleasure to introduce our wonderful, energetic Executive Director, Joyce Marin. Enjoy the day, everyone.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you all for coming. I just want to take a moment to take it in that you all honored us by joining us today. I feel like I'm the human equivalent of a border collie. I like it when we all get together. So last year, we were in this room. How many people were at the Hotel Bethlehem with us? Okay, so, and people told me they liked it enough, they came back. How many people 2 years ago were at the Holiday Inn down the street? Okay, so just like me, there are some people who really like this conversation on smart growth and sustainability. The thing which brought me 2 years ago plus to this position, and actually about 10 years ago, Alan Jennings recruited me as the founding co-chair with Andy Dowell of the organization, is that I like the conversation. And 2 years ago, I talked about how I took the position because the farmland preservation was important to me, that when I saw a certain kind of development happening, I'd feel it in my stomach. And after I took the job, Dave Lobach, who is now on our board, CEO of Embassy Bank and one of our sponsors, met me for lunch, and I said, you know, I feel this thing in my stomach. Do you feel it, Dave? And he said, yes. I said, where do you feel it? He said, I feel it all over. I was like, woohoo, okay, maybe you belong on my board. So anyway, there are from CEOs to young whippersnappers, some of whom you met, helped you find parking, and I appreciate the praise. we get a really diverse crowd. We get anarchists and young Republicans. I was in the elevator this morning with one of each. That's not true. Billy Mack, where are you? Billy was an anarchist, and he was a punk folk musician turned community builder, and he is a social media phenomenon, and he's about to open the Coffee House Without Limits on 4th Street here in Allentown. So anyway, we have a very diverse crowd. Last year, I stood in front of this very board, and 145,000 people are moving to the Lehigh Valley in the next 20 years, says the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. And what are we going to do about it? Can we have better outcomes? I am not going to get into the negative reasons that motivate us, that might be related to air quality or traffic, or quality of life, or equity. We all, feel that urgently. But it's not one person. We're 62 municipalities in the region, and there is no hero leader who is going to help us and just solve this problem. We have to learn how to work together. And that is why I believe we have the Summit for Smart Growth and Sustainability, so that we can connect, so that we can be inspired. And we have two amazing keynote speakers. Judy Ricks is about to speak, and Chuck Marone. For lunchtime, we have two amazing panels that have been put together by the events committee, chaired by Julie and Mike. And then in the afternoon, and I'm hoping you will stay for this, we'll roll up our sleeves and dig in. So we had last year, we were about to end the Envision process when we got together, and that was that $3.4 million sustainability planning grant that had 14 consortium partners, including the 3 cities and the 2 counties. It was a big deal. And then it was ending at the end of December, and people said, well, what's going to happen? So those working table meetings we had is when we dug in, and about 100 people stayed, and I hope all of you stay. From those, people say, well, what happened? Well, what happened was Julie got out her pitchfork, and we had a planning session with the board, and we reset our initiatives. Took the energy from those discussions and created 4 committees. Those committees are farmland preservation, food sustainability, smart transportation, and smart growth, education, and outreach. Those are Renew committees that are doing cool things, and some of which is visible in the tables that you can see how they're lobbying. So this afternoon we have 10 topics. Depending on how many people stay, we actually have the flexibility to add a couple of topics. So if there's something there that you don't see but you're really passionate about, there is the opportunity for us to add a couple more. You will see that some of the tables have a number and a topic. There are no assigned seats. You don't have to sit at that topic. But eventually, by 2 in the afternoon, you're going to want to migrate to the topic that you'd like to talk about. In the meantime, you may be sitting with people who are passionate about that. So that is where we're going, both with today and as a region. We can't solve these challenging problems without each other. We believe in bringing together a diversity of voices and perspectives. We never vilify anyone. We know we have serious problems, but we're also the eternal optimists. And we think we can just do better if we continue to put the high goal of smart growth and sustainability before us. And 2 years ago, when we were at the Holiday Inn, this was an empty building. And a lot of people, over a lot of years, have worked hard to make things better in Allentown and in the entire Lehigh Valley. Now, speaking of people who've made things better, I wanted to take this moment to honor our elected and appointed officials. And last night, I sat down at my table with the list, and half the people in this room are appointed and elected officials. I would take up the whole program thanking you by name. So would you please stand? If you are, we will applaud you all who do the work. Come on, Donna Wright. Yes, Percy Dougherty. Come on, everybody stand. That wasn't all of them. Some of them were modest. So, But we are going to be seeing Mayor Ed Haza, Mayor Panto from Easton, and Mayor Pulowski later today. So we're really grateful that we have elected officials who care about us. Lastly, I want to honor a group I might get choked up if I talk about, which last year I asked our intern what I should call them. She said, call us young whippersnappers. Out of the ether, because we're on the internet, come these really great, amazing people who just want to help. And they make this day possible in a lot of ways. We have Brian Perry from Lehigh University. I think some of them are out at the table. Could you bring Kate Cavazza in? Kate leads the charge. She is our Lehigh University fellow. Oh, there she is, Kate. Now, no one can hire her for another 6 months, but she is finishing her master's degree at Lehigh, and she's awesome. And actually, Brian is graduating in another
2-3 weeks, yeah.
Okay, so you can help by hiring these people. Billy Mack is around, and anyway, there are others. I would also like to, as we go forward, people say, what's next? So one of the ways that we can stay together, only once a year do we physically get together like this, but through the wonders of the internet and the Sustainability Commons, we can stay connected. So Tom Morose will be getting an invitation to the Sustainability Commons. Many of you have participated in past years, where we had a lot of documents we wanted you to read. This year, the bulk of it is going to be the discussions that we have. We're going to be recording those discussions and then communicating them so we can stay together through the Sustainability Commons and keep those conversations going and get some traction on doing stuff. With that, I would like to invite Julie, our beloved Julie Thomas.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. It was one evening, almost 15 years ago, that I was sitting in the White Dog Cafe in Philadelphia when I first heard about the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit, and about the critical need to build local living economies where people and place are valued more than profit. The evening was a Sustainable Business Network event hosted by the owner of the White Dog Cafe, Judy Wicks. Judy grew up in the outskirts of a small town in western Pennsylvania and developed a deep love of nature and witnessed the role of small businesses in community life. After graduating from college, she lived for nearly a year in the remote Alaskan village of, I'm not sure how you pronounce this, Chefernak, as a Vista volunteer, where she had the transformational experience of living in a culture based on sharing and cooperation. During the 90s, her experiences working with small farmers in Chiapas, as well as at home in Pennsylvania, shaped Judy's vision of a global economy comprised of a network of self-reliant and sustainable local economies connected by small to small fair trade relationships. Working towards this vision for self-reliant local communities, in 2001, Judy founded the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia and co-founded the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, BALI, which now includes some 30,000 local, and international independent businesses in the US and Canada. Valley envisions an economy that provides for the needs of all people while working in harmony with natural systems. As an entrepreneur, Judy is best known for Philadelphia's landmark White Dog Cafe, which she founded in 1983 on the first floor of her house and managed it for 26 years. Under Judy's leadership, the White Dog became a leader in the local food movement, purchasing sustainably grown produce from local family farmers and only humanely and naturally raised meat, poultry, and eggs, sustainably harvested fish, and fair trade coffee, tea, chocolate, vanilla, and cinnamon. But not only that, the White Dog paid a living wage, mentored inner city high school students, implemented recycling and composting, solar heated hot water, eco-friendly soaps and office supplies, and purchased 100% of electricity from renewable sources, the first business in Pennsylvania to do so. In 2000, Judy founded Fair Food, which now has numerous programs to connect local family farms with the urban marketplace. Judy has been a keynote speaker at universities and in communities throughout the country and around the world. Her award-winning book, Good Morning Beautiful Business, The Unexpected Journey of an Activist Entrepreneur and Local Economy Pioneer, was published in March 2013 and won the 2014 Gold Medal in the category of Business Leadership. It is most appropriate that today, as we talk about our towns, our farms, and our future, that Judy shares with us what is needed to build a more compassionate, sustainable, local economy. Judy, where are you? Judy, I just want to say it's wonderful to see your beautiful, radiant face again, and it's an honor to have you here. Please join me in welcoming nationally renowned author, social innovator, and mentor, Judy Wicks.
Thank you, Julie. That was a wonderful introduction. I'll take you home with me. You can always introduce me. That is great. So it's just wonderful to be here. I love to be in places where people gather because they care about their community. So I congratulate everybody that put together this event and came here this morning. So I had a sign in my closet that I saw each morning when I looked above the White Dog Cafe that said, "Good morning, beautiful business," when I opened the door of my closet to get dressed. And it was a reminder to me of just how beautiful business can be when we put our creativity and our energy and our care into producing a product or a service that our community needs. So it was a time in the morning when I think about my own business and how the farmers must be out in the fields picking organic fruits and vegetables to bring into town, and the farm animals out in pasture in the sunshine. And I think about my goat herder, Dougie, who said that when she kissed her goat's ears, it made the cheese better. And I think that's probably true. So for me, I believe that business is really about relationships, that money is simply a tool, that business is about relationships with everybody that we buy from and sell to and work with, and about our relationship with Earth itself. My business is really the way that I express my love of life, and that's what made it a thing of beauty. I thought I'd just read one really short passage from the preface of my book, just to give you kind of an overview of my philosophy. This book is both a love story and a business book. It's about a love of life, nature, animals, community, and unique local culture. A love of good food and family farms, and a love of democracy, all being threatened by a global economic system driven by profit. It's also about a deep love of business and how we can embrace a way of doing business that is beautiful, that nurtures all that we cherish, and that furthers the creation of a whole new economic system based on caring relationships. Though this new economy is global in vision, my story, and the story for each of us, begins right at home in our own community and with our own capacity to recognize and protect what we truly care about. So this was my place, my first community where I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, Ingomar. This was the busiest intersection because this is where the beer distributor was located. But it was in Ingomar that I witnessed the role that small business played in community life. I would go with my mother or my grandmother to the butcher, and the butcher would ask, how was that steak last Saturday night, or how was that turkey on Thanksgiving? Because he knew where the animal was raised. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. You know, these are the foundational relationships in community life that we've often lost to corporate globalization. But it was good for me that during this time, at least in Ingomar, I was able to see how important it was to have local ownership of businesses. So the first step in building a sustainable local economy is to take responsibility for a place and to become knowledgeable of that place. Where does our water come from? Where does our energy come from? Where does our food come from? Where does our waste go to? These are the fundamental questions that everyone should answer about the place where they live, and to take responsibility for that place. So this was the place that I lived for 40 years, a brownstone row house on Sansom Street in West Philadelphia, and I started the White Dog on the first floor of my house. My kids were 2 and 4 when I started the White Dog, and I picture them here because I want to make the point that we lived above the shop, the old-fashioned way of doing business, living and working in the same community. And not that we need to live above the shop, but I think there's a lot of repercussions of living and working in the same community because we have the same values at home as we do at work. Many people practice the golden rule when they're at home, but then when they get to work, old rules. So for me, I found that when I saw every day the people affected by my decisions, whether it was my employees or my customers, my neighbors, my man-made environment, my natural environment, I was more likely to make decisions with a balance of head and heart. That there's a short distance between me as the business decision maker and those affected by those decisions. And as we know, most CEOs live very far away from the people and places and animals that are affected by their business decisions. So I'll give you a couple examples of this. Here's a dishwasher, a long-time dishwasher at the White Dog. This picture was actually taken in Havana, Cuba, because we had a sister restaurant project where I took my customers and staff to different countries to learn how U.S. foreign policy affected the lives of others. And so this was in Cuba. But anyway, I put Greg's picture up here because I want to talk about the living wage. That when I first heard about the living wage, which is a voluntary commitment on the part of a business owner to pay not just the legally required wage, but what does it actually cost to live in a particular place. When I first heard about this, I thought, gee, that sounds great for other businesses, but you can never do that in restaurant business. And you know, I don't want people to tell me how much I should be paying my people, you know, this kind of an attitude. And then one day I was in the kitchen, and Greg and 2 other dishwashers happened to look up at me, and the light bulb went off. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I thinking? I mean, of course I want anyone who works at the White Dog full time to be able to pay their rent and buy their food and their clothes. Of course I want to pay a living wage. But that became because of my personal relationship with Greg and the others who worked with me, that I wanted a better life for them. Another example of this balance of head and heart is my relationship with nature. That I had heard about climate change. I had heard that we were able to buy renewable energy in Pennsylvania. We were the first state along with California to be deregulated. But I hadn't been motivated to make a change until there was a drought around 2000, 2001. And I went up to the woods in the Poconos where I like to hike. In fact, I go right past Allentown on my way up and saw how the drought was affecting the woods that I cared about. That the creek was all dried up, the leaves were starting to fall off the trees even though it was August. And as I walked through the forest, it was just like an eerie silence, not even the birds were singing. And I finally got it, I just felt it. This is what climate change is going to be like. That parts of the world are going to have droughts and fires. This fire was just in the air, not even the birds were singing. And so creepy. I know the first you're going to have storms or floods, and of course, as we know, that's exactly what has happened. So I just went over to a big oak tree and became a tree hugger. Pressed my face against the bark and promised that I would go back to Philadelphia and find out how to sign up for renewable energy. And as Julie said, the White Dog became the first business in Pennsylvania to buy 100% of our electricity from renewable sources. Another example is my relationship with my community. I was in the car and I stopped in front of West Philadelphia High School at a red light and was watching the students come out. And I was thinking to myself, this is the public high school where my own children would go if they didn't go to a private Quaker high school. And here I am not knowing the children in my own community, in my own public school. So I went in and talked to the principal and we started a mentoring program of 10th graders at West Philadelphia High who wanted to learn to be in the restaurant business. And so they worked in the kitchen and the dining room and the office and so on. Here we took them out to the farm to show where our food was grown. And that's another example of my relationship with my community. One of the things that I don't like about the business world is the mantra of grow or die, that you have to keep growing your business bigger and bigger and bigger in order to succeed. But meanwhile, we're past the point of sustainability in terms of how much growth that the earth can handle in terms of renewing resources and dealing with our pollution. So at first, when people would ask me, how many restaurants do you have? You're a successful restaurateur, so really you must have a chain. I said, well, I just have one, you know. And so for a while I thought, well, am I a big sissy? But then I realized that I really didn't want to have more restaurants because I would lose what was most important to me, and that was the relationships that I had with everybody that worked for me and with my customers and so on, that I would lose that if I started a chain of White Dogs. So instead of starting another White Dog in someone else's community, I started a Black Cat in my own community, which is a store next door to the White Dog that specialized in products that were locally made as well as fair trade. So another example of this way of growing for entrepreneurs is Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a very successful deli that had many opportunities to do a chain of delis. And instead of doing that, they looked to see, what does my community need? So they started a bakery, they started a creamery and made their own ice cream and yogurt. They started a candy company. They started a fair trade coffee roasting company. They now have something like 15 or 20 businesses. They call it the Zingerman family of businesses. And not only that, not only are they serving their community by replacing goods that were being imported into Ann Arbor with goods being made there, so they're creating more jobs and more community wealth. But they're also creating more owners because they gave ownership opportunity with each new business to their employees. So they now have, I don't know how many owners of their family of businesses. So I see change as being like invasive species going into other communities and smothering out the local businesses. So that got me thinking about, well, how does nature grow? What is the healthy way to grow? Well, nature grows deeper in place. Nature grows to become more diverse, more complex, and more adaptive to the needs of the ecosystem. And that's just the way that businesses can grow also. Rather than growing out like this and spreading out all over the place, we can grow deeper in our own communities to better serve the needs of our communities, just as Zingerman's did. I also began to realize that we didn't have to grow physically at all, that we could grow by increasing our knowledge, by expanding our consciousness, by deepening our relationships, by developing our creativity, by building community, and having more fun. And I'll give you some examples of the way we did that. At dinner, and this is what Julie was talking about the first time that we met when she came to the White Dog with Dan, was for our table talk, that we would have table talks on issues of public concern with speakers, authors and so on. We had storytelling with real people telling real stories, often underrepresented voices. This is a gay couple talking about gay marriage, and a lesbian couple also. We'd have also tales from jails of ex-offenders telling their stories, or recent immigrants and so on. We did community tours. This is a tour of community gardens throughout the city. Affordable housing tours, tours of the prisons. And we did a lot of special events that were lots of fun, and I'll just briefly go through. This was one of my favorite ones. This was the eve of 4th of July, the Liberty and Justice for All Ball, where we had a buffet of farm fresh foods out in
the street, and then afterwards I did a little skit called Birth of the Nation, where I came as a pregnant colonial woman. There I am, being led out by my midwife. And on my back, I had this sign. My midwife helped me into bed and said to the audience, 1, 2, 3, everybody yell, push! And I pushed my beach ball under the covers, and then my twins were born, who were hiding underneath. There's my first twin. Here comes my second twin. One's called Liberty, one's Justice. They hop on the stage and do a tap dance, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Then we wheel out the Statue of Liberty and light our sparklers and sing God Bless America. So we used to have a lot of fun like that, and I think nowadays that people think that in order to have fun, you have to spend a lot of money and a lot of carbons to fly to some exotic place to have a good time. We really can have more fun in our own communities where we deepen relationships with our neighbors, with our families, with our employees, and so on. So this is another way that the White Dog grew. By growing community, by having more fun. And these are the things that we can do in a way that limits the carbons of traveling. So what the White Dog was most known for was buying from local farmers. This is Judy and Mark Dornstrike from Branch Creek Farm in Bucks County. They were, by the way, surrounded by development and encroaching on their land. It was just horrible to go out there because they just had such a beautiful landscape in the beginning, and then all of a sudden there's just houses like all around them. Mark's passed away now, but anyway, they grew incredible organic vegetables. And Mark once told me that a successful farm is the balance between masculine energies and feminine energies, between efficiency and nurturing. If you have too much efficiency and not enough nurturing, you might have a very well-run farm. But the product won't be as good. On the other hand, if you have too much nurturing without enough efficiency, you might have great tomatoes, but you're going to go out of business because you're not using your time wisely and efficiently. And this got me thinking about how our whole economy is out of balance, that we have too much masculine energy, too much efficiency, as opposed to the feminine nurturing. And I'm not talking about gender here, I'm talking about the masculine and feminine energies that are in each of us and how they're out of kilter in our society and particularly in the business world. And the worst example of this is the factory farming of animals. The name of the game here with these mother hens is how little space can you give that hen, how little light and air, how little food, no nurturing whatsoever in this situation. It is all about efficiency. How can we get the cheapest egg possible? So at the White Dog, we bought all of our chicken and eggs from farms in the area that were free range for the chickens. Then I found out about the horrors of the factory farming of pigs and how these mother pigs are kept in these cages where they can't even turn around or go forward or backward their entire lives. Artificially inseminated, the babies away taken away prematurely, artificially inseminated again as though they were pieces of equipment in a factory. And yet these are sentient beings, these are mammals, like our dogs, like us. And all of we mammals share basic emotions of fear, of joy. And we can see these emotions on the faces of our dogs. The joy of going for a walk, the despair of being left behind, the guilt if the dog takes a little piece of sausage off the coffee table or whatever. That mammals have emotions, and pigs have the intelligence, they say, of a 2 or 3 year old child. So I felt that this was a breach of our stewardship, our duty to take care of our animals, to treat them in this really barbaric way. So I finally just walked into the kitchen and said, we just have to take the pork off the menu, because I realized that the pork I was serving at the White Dog came from places like this, as all pork in the United States does, unless you know otherwise. It's only a small majority that don't come from factory farm situation. Pretty soon we were able to find a local producer of pasture pork. This is a farm in Lancaster County. This is the way that pigs like to sleep in pig piles, in dirt and the sun. They're very social creatures. It didn't take us too long to find a supplier, and started getting 2 pigs a week. This is Buck Run Farm, Dr. Bill Elkins and his herd of Angus, and we bought only grass-fed beef, because that's another issue in the farm system, and the cows are taken off pasture and given grains, which are not good for them. It's not their natural diet. They're supposed to eat grass and clover and whatnot. Also with dairy, that in the dairy business, the calves are taken away from the mothers at birth so that we humans can drink the milk that was made for the baby calves. And I don't know why I never figured this out before. Most people don't realize this. We just think, oh, the cows just give milk, we drink it. We don't realize that the cows are forced to have the babies are artificially inseminated and then the babies are taken away, so that adult humans end up drinking the milk. So anyway, we found a farm that where the babies are kept with the mothers. This is actually Hawthorne Valley Farm in the Hudson Valley, where they keep the babies with the mothers for 9 or 10 months. And that's the way it used to be done. In the old days, we shared milk with the calf to make her cheese and yogurt and so on. But it's all about money. So here's Dougie. She's the one that kisses her goat's ears to make the cheese better. And I finally got to the place where I looked at my menu and thought, well, we've finally done it. We have a cruelty-free menu that all of our animal products come from small farms where the animals are treated kindly and respected. This is going to be our market niche. This is our competitive advantage. We're the only restaurant in Philadelphia that's doing this. But then I thought to myself, well, Judy, if you really do care about those pigs and animals, if you really care about the small farms being driven out of business, if you really care about the environment being polluted by the concentration of manure in these factory farms, if you care about the workers in these horrible slaughterhouses and factory farms, and if you care about the consumers that are eating meat that's full of hormones and antibiotics, then rather than keep this as your proprietary information, you share this with your competitors. So that was a huge step for me. When I realized that there's no such thing as one sustainable business, that we can only be part of a sustainable system, and that we have to work in cooperation, including with our competitors, in order to build a sustainable food system or sustainable energy system or whatever it happens to be. And that's really a key element in this whole new economy movement, is that we need to cooperate with each other, especially in the face of climate change, to go faster and build sustainable systems as fast as we can. We need to cooperate with each other. So I asked Glenn, this is Glenn Brendel from Green Meadow Farm. This was at the Dance of the Ripe Tomatoes that we had with our farmers and customers. But I asked Glenn, who was bringing me 2 pigs a week, if he wanted to expand his business, and he said yes. And I said, well, what's holding you back? And he said he needed a refrigerated truck so that he could carry out all the meat needed to service many restaurants in Philadelphia, but he didn't have the money. So I loaned him $30,000 at a very low interest rate, and he bought the truck and paid me back in 10 years or so. So he expanded his business, and then I started Fair Food, a nonprofit, and the first project of Fair Food was to make a directory of all the farms that the White Dog bought from with the contact information, and take it around and give it to all the other restaurants in town. And then we started the Fair Food Farm Stand that now carries about products of 100 different farms and local food enterprises, like energy bars and milled flours and chutneys and soups and canned peaches and so on, all locally made. We have our own crackers in Philadelphia now, so we can put our local cheese on our local cracker and wash it down with local beer or wine. So I believe that social change begins with non-cooperation with the system. When I said that I'm not going to buy factory farm pork, then I was put in the position, okay, if you're not going to buy that, then you have to create a new system. So that's the first thing. I think that's the starting point for all of us, is that, so what are you most upset about in this economy? Is it that slaves are used to make chocolate? So you make a commitment, I'm never going to buy chocolate that's not fair trade. Or you're upset about the sweatshops for clothing, so you buy local clothing and so on. But that's kind of the entry point, just as it was for Gandhi's Salt March and the Montgomery bus boycott, where Rosa Parks refused to move. So one of the most inspirational groups I met were the Zapatista Indians in Chiapas, Mexico, and I wanted to understand why they had their uprising on the day that NAFTA went into effect, January 1st, 1994. So I went down and found out that it was all about self-reliance, that they didn't want to be forced into the global economy. They wanted to be able to raise their own corn. With NAFTA, the borders were lowered so that cheap subsidized corn from the U.S. would come in and put out of business their local corn farmers, and of course that's exactly what happened. So that's what they had their uprising about. So they wanted to maintain their local self-reliance and grow their corn for the domestic marketplace, grow their own fruits and vegetables to feed their families. They wanted to teach their children in their own language. They wanted to maintain their own customs and not be part of the global monoculture of corporate globalization. They wanted to wear the same clothing that their women had been weaving for many, many generations, and not be forced to work in the maquiladoras as part of the global economy, that making cheap clothes for export to the United States. So I began to see the relationship between what was happening to the farmers in Chiapas and our own farmers here in Pennsylvania, that our own farmers were being forced off the land by large corporations, whether they were developers or large farms that were putting them out of business. So I began to see envision a new global economy, one that was, rather than controlled by large corporations, one that was a network of sustainable local economies, where basic needs were made locally: food, shelter, clothing, energy. And then we trade globally for what we don't have locally, and what we take pride in, something, special wine or special fashion or whatever. So we continue to have global trade, but we have self-reliance in what we need to live on. So I believe that local self-reliance and local identity, local cultural identity, builds the foundation for world peace. Even now with what's going on with terrorism, I read that a lot of the Muslim youth have no sense of cultural identity when they're not connected to a place. They've been moved out of their homelands in the Middle East, and now in Britain or France or something, they don't feel like they belong there. There's no knowledge of their home and so on. Anyway, I don't want to go on. I'm running out of time here. So these are some of the most important points of this movement for local economy, that we have decentralized ownership in manufacturing as well as retail, that our retail stores and restaurants give our community identity, a cultural identity, to have a unique local flavor, and our local manufacturing really builds community wealth, keeping those products regionally produced. Farm to tables, they're one of the first steps in local self-reliance of supporting local farms and buying from local farmers. Dirt to shirt. This is an example of a project in North Carolina where they connected the cotton. This fellow realized that the T-shirts he was buying were made in China, and thought, why are we buying cotton T-shirts from China when North Carolina has the capital of cotton? So he reconnected the supply chain and created 350 new jobs of bringing cotton back to the Carolinas. Forest to furniture. Sustainable harvesting of our woodlands to make our homes and furniture. Sun to socket, of course, more and more solar. We talked about having all these new people moving into the Lehigh Valley. We need to have electric cars that keep the pollution down. We need more charging stations and more rooftop solar. Botanicals to body. This is a big emerging market in the cities of local people making soaps and lotions, shampoos, and so on for local herbs. And a very important part of this movement is investing locally, because we need the money to build a new economy. We need to take our money out of the stock market, which is just supporting a suicide economy, and put our dollars in our local banks, our local investment vehicles, in order to receive a living return. When we invest locally, we not only get a financial return, but a living return of living in a healthier community. And so we want to have an inclusive community where there's prosperity for all, and the localization movement creates more jobs locally, because we're replacing all those imports into our community with locally made products. We need more owners. We need more businesses that will provide jobs for our local community. And we need to change public policies to support local economies, because they're very much weighted towards large corporations. And there's a collective joy. This is our Sustainable Business Network's retreat in the Poconos, and there's real collective joy in working together towards a shared vision for our communities. This is an urgent task because of climate change, that we need to work in a cooperative way to reduce our carbons by reducing long-distance shipping, but also preparing our communities for the changes that are coming our way with climate change, to be self-reliant in our basic needs. So we all of us belong to the vibrant community of life on Earth. And there is no separation between people and nature. We are part of nature, and we're interconnected with all other people and with all life on Earth. It's very important in terms of building a new economy that we lead with love, that we can really transform our economy from one that's life-destroying to one that's life-giving by awakening our hearts and the hearts of the entrepreneurs, the hearts of the investors, the hearts of all of us as consumers to lead with love. When we believe that all life is interconnected, we can feel the suffering of the pigs. We can feel the struggle of the small farmers and the farm workers, and we can feel the pollution of the waterways and the dying fish. So my own heart was awakened when I made the decision to share with my competitors, but it wasn't a decision that I made in my head. I was very afraid at first, and I was afraid that my profits would go down and my sales would go down, but I made a decision not with my head but with my heart. I made the decision because I love the animals, I love the pigs, and that was really the motivation that made me, it helped me, that when we love our places and take responsibility for them, when we open our hearts and lead with love, that we can build a just, sustainable, and joyful community. And if we succeed in leaving a viable future for our children and the children of all species, it will be because humankind has evolved to take our rightful place in the community of life, not as exploiters, but as lovers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judy Wicks. Now is the time when we can spend 10 minutes asking Judy questions. So is there anyone who has a question for Judy? And in the meantime, those of you who are standing in the back, you're welcome to come and sit down at the front.
Well, I did want to mention that I am going to be selling my book out there during the breaks. If anyone would like to know more.
Okay.
Nazoski. Hi.
Hi.
I came in at the end, but that was really pretty great. I'm a tree hugger myself, so I love what you said. But let me ask you a quick question. You know, you're a businesswoman, and so how did you get to the point where you mentioned it was really pretty scary to share your stuff with competitors, and that makes sense, but that you led with your heart, which is something that, you know, every business person has a heart, but it's not usually the first thing that they lead with.
Yeah.
And yet, usually the combination of two is the success. So what would you say to traditional business folks who are working towards knowing intuitively and in their hearts that they have to go there? What would you say to them in terms of how they get there?
Yeah, to trust your own intuition. I think in the business world, at least when I was a young manager, the fellow who was training me said you can't go on your feelings. You got to close down and make the tough decisions, and you got to be able to fire people and do whatever, you know, without feeling anything. And so I think that's what business people think you're supposed to do. That if you have emotions, that you're a wimp. You know, you're never going to make it. So I think it's really about trusting the idea that we need to lead with love, that the reason that we're in the predicament that we're in is that the business world has been leading with greed, you know, that leading to make more money, to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and make more and more profits, and not really thinking about how is my business affecting the lives, you know, of other people, of animals, of nature. That we still don't talk about that as a society. We still measure success in our economy. How much is our economy growing? How much is it growing? And how much are our own bank accounts growing? And how much are our businesses, growing? We don't really think about what I think we should think about is to measure our successes is how is our community becoming healthier and happier? How is our natural environment becoming healthier? Those are the things that really matter in our lives. And I think when we think about what do I care about as a business person, and think about how my business decisions, it's all about the decision-making moment, making decisions for the good of all. And I think when people really think about what do I really care about, most people will think, well, I care about my family, my children's future. I care about my community. I care about nature. And so we have to break through these stereotypes that business people need to shut down emotionally when they operate, and operate from a place of connection. What is our connection with others? Because basically, my foundational spiritual belief is that God is in all, that the universal spirit is in all people and all animals, in all of life, and that when we do harm to others, we do harm to ourselves. So it's enlightened self-interest, really, that should guide us towards making decisions for the good of all, instead of narrow self-interest like profit.
Thank you.
I love your talk, and I love how it looked like you were having a lot of fun, and you had a lot of people who were involved with what you're doing.
Yes.
So as a small nonprofit just starting out, how do you reach out to those people within the community and bring them into your message and keep that, that spirit going forward?
Have a party. I really do think that convening people, bringing people together, and sharing food is really important way of building community. I had the good fortune of being in the restaurant business, so it made it a lot easier. But I think that's what drew me to the restaurant business, is because I really used my business as a vehicle for building community. And my goal, and I also have had nonprofits as well. And again, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit business, our goal should be to enrich our community, and enrich our community life. That this is where we live, and that's another reason I think it's really important to live and work in the same community. I don't know how people do it when they commute, because you have two different communities to take care of. I could never have done what I did without living and working in the same place and not having to commute and have two different sets of issues and whatnot. So I think just become engaged in the community where you work, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit, and have real personal relationships with people, so that it's not just stereotypes that you're working with, but you know people as people and as members of the same community.
This is just a quick one. Is there anything you think that municipal governments can do to encourage this kind of ethic? Obviously, we're looking at regulations and zoning and so forth.
Well, one thing that the question was about, what can local governments do? One of the things that local governments traditionally do that is harmful is giving tax breaks and subsidies and whatnot to large corporations. And I think the economic development plans for many communities, they think that their problems will be solved if they can lure large corporations into the community. So everything is done to try and get these large corporations to settle in a particular community, to give them tax breaks and whatnot, subsidies. And then those same businesses compete locally, and then they can just pull up stakes and leave. So it's really important to have an economic development plan for a local government's that supports local businesses, that encourages local manufacturing, especially of basic needs, food processing, clothing manufacturing. Bring this manufacturing back to our municipalities. In Philadelphia, that's beginning to happen, especially with food, that there's more and more food enterprises that are using the products of the local farms to manufacture products that you can eat year-round. So you go into the grocery store, it's not just the fresh food that comes from local farms. That's the first step, and that's really important. But what about all those middle aisles? If we can start to stock those middle aisles with things that are made locally, the cereals and the energy bars and whatnot, then you can have real economic impact. So it's that manufacturing, local manufacturing, that's so important, and I think training young people, giving them hope to start businesses, because it's kind of a daunting thing to think you're going to compete against large corporations, but when you're providing a need in your own community with a local business, it's something that young people can aspire to. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are experts on this this exact subject, or what kind of taxes and regulations should you have to support local business, and that's not my particular area. But Michael Schumann, he's somebody you might want to have come speak another time, and he speaks specifically on that, of how local municipalities and governments can support the localism movement.
Now I'm back here, if there's anybody in the back of the room that has a question.
Thank you. Very interesting talk. I appreciate your passion on that. Disagree with some of your points, particularly on profit. My view is profit is really the only true source of jobs and labor income, and it's really the backbone for innovation that makes our lives better. But we'll set that aside for a moment. Your concept of doing things locally, small farms, great concept. My question to you is, how do we get the scale that is needed to support the current population both in the United States and the world? I don't see how you reconcile those two, and I'd appreciate if you could walk us through how that's accomplished.
Well, first of all, I think I saw a sign on a table here about farmland preservation. That's one thing, is to stop the sprawl. In Philadelphia, people are starting to move back into the city, and this is the first year, I think last year was something like 40 years, where the population actually went up. So that's a really important thing, that instead of building more houses on farmland out in the suburbs, that we get people to live downtown. That population density is better for the environment. And keep that green belt around the cities. We desperately need that farmland that we're losing to developers. So that's the number one thing, is to save the land. And then the other is to train young farmers. And that's another thing that's beginning to emerge now around the country, is the training programs for farmers, because we need more farmers. I forget what the median age is for farmers in the United States, but it's something like 60, 65 years old. So we need young farmers. And that's, again, beginning to happen. And we need processors of the food, and that's kind of the next step in this movement. So those are some of the, we're never going to be able to grow everything locally. I'm not suggesting that. I mean, New York City, think about that. How much land they would need around New York. I mean, things are going to have to come in, but the idea is to grow as much as you can locally, to manufacture as much as you can locally, because that builds community wealth. And whenever we buy products that are made elsewhere, that wealth is going out of our communities. So the more that we can buy from each other within a community, the more that wealth recirculates within the community and builds a community wealth. And I do want to address that point about profit, because of course I believe in profit. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business person. Businesses can't operate without profit. But I see profit as a way to not just enrich me, but better serve. Like at the White Dog, what I would do is once a year in January, after I saw how much money I made that year, I would give out profit sharing. I would pay off some of my debts. I would buy equipment that I needed. But I also said, okay, well, we could afford to give a little bit more benefits. So we started giving benefits to our servers, for instance. Traditionally, tip employees don't have benefits. So, my goal wasn't to just keep making more and more profit. My goal was to serve my customers, serve my employees, serve my community, and serve nature. That was my mission. And I saw profit as a way to fulfill that. So we need to really change our measurement of success. And if we measure our success by maximizing profits rather than maximizing relationships, we're headed towards a destroyed world and great inequality and so on. So it's really about maximizing relationships. It's not being anti-profit at all. We need that profit. And when I made a good profit, I was so excited because I could share it with my employees. I could give raises. I could, buy more organics or whatever. So I just try to keep myself right above continuing to make a profit and continue to pay myself a decent salary. But how much is enough? And a lot of people just think their salaries just have to keep going up, 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 up. And that's the problem. So it's really about changing our measurement of success and really thinking about what's more important to me. It was more important to me that I had happy employees, that I had a healthy community, a healthy natural environment, than it was for me to just have more and more money in my bank account, which could have been a choice that I could have made, but I chose not to. And I'll tell you, I'm a much happier person for it. So thank you very much.
need to consult the agenda. I think they'll have a break. And so the restrooms are that way, they're near the elevators. Oh, there will be book signing afterwards. Judy has her book, Good Morning Beautiful Business, which I am partially through, and I'm so inspired. It's really a great story. I'll be willing to sign the book for you to buy it here. And we're back in 10 minutes, and we're going to have a fabulous